All right, welcome back. This will be episode 5, converting the free wing Cougar to a turbine. In this video, we're going to be talking about the brakes. Um, when I first got this model, I thought it'd be a piece of cake. It'd just be like all the other free wing models. You put the T33 retracts in, and they got enough guts to raise the gear and be no problem. Well, I found out different. This is a stock Cougar main gear, and it's got the similar Avante retract, and gonna swap it out. Well, it's modified because of the gear really doesn't go up all the way because of this angle here, but the worm drive goes through its free travel, and they accomplish that by modifying the trunnion here. So this is a stock Cougar trunnion, okay? This is a stock Avante trunnion. So what they did is they kind of milled this off right here so that as it goes through its whole travel, the worm gear goes through its whole travel, it hits the micro switch, and it pretty much, the gear stops moving. So I go, well, yeah, I'll just stick the Avante trunnion in a T33 gear. Well, that didn't work out because here's a stock T33 trunnion, here's a stock Avante trunnion, and they're different. They look kind of the same, but they're different. Okay, they're beefier and a little bit bigger. So I at one time I modified the existing T33 trunnion. What I did is I milled this off a little bit, and I go, fine, it should work. Well, it doesn't because the worm travels a little bit longer for the geometry of the Cougar gear, so I had to make an extension on it, okay? And it was a pain in the butt because after I milled it, I inserted some music wire and then built it up with JB Weld, and it worked, but it's not an option. So the only option is to really put a nose gear brake on the nose gear, and it's been working out really good. It does have it's a little flaw where you don't have the weight of the full model resting on the nose gear. You only got probably 30% of the weight of the model on the nose gear, so you don't have quite the braking authority as you do with the main gear, but it gets the job done. So that's what I'm recommending doing. It's really the only feasible option. Um, so then it's like, well, how do I go about doing that for you guys? Because you know, there's quite a bit of modification that has. This is the stock, strut and fork off of a Cougar, and it's nicely done. I mean, they got flats on it and set screws and everything. So you got to convert this fork, to accept a JP brake. And it's like, well, okay, I really don't want to have to mess around with you guys sending me your strut and I modify it because it's going to cost you at least 10, 12 bucks to get it here. And this whole assembly here, it's costing me 25 bucks. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys two options. Okay. I can do a whole turnkey thing, with it, it'll come just like this with a JP brake on here. I got to do some machining on the wheel to get it in there. I mean, it's turnkey. It comes with a brake controller, and I can do that for 120 bucks. That is what it's going to take. Or I can send you a partial where you can modify the fork yourself. I'll have the JP brake machine to go around the fork, and I'll give you the axle and a little piece of tubing and a brake controller. It'll be 75. So it's going to be your option to just, if you decide to order the kit, just let me know what you want to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what is involved in taking a partial brake assembly and getting it rigged up to the fork here, okay? So I got just a stock fork right here. Okay, the first thing you got to do is the stock fork is not wide enough to fit around everything, okay? So you got to open up this dimension right here to 0.725, and right now it's 0.65. So you got to open it up 75 thousandths. Well, I got a tool made. If you don't have the tool, you just take it with a pliers, each one, and try to bend them evenly and get it opened up to 725. I got this thing made up here because I've made quite a bit. Let me grab a hammer. So what I do is I just bang this wood into it. Bam, it's a 725. I just gotta get the thing out. So let's see what we got here. All right, it's a little bit bigger. It's, 15 thousandths too big. That's fine. Okay, we'll deal with that. But now the hole, basically the hole now goes kind of like that, okay? And it's a 4 millimeter hole, and it needs to be taken to a 5 millimeter because that's the diameter of the bearings on a JP wheel, okay? So, and that's the diameter of the inner hole on the brake. So what it is, this now has to be reamed up for a 5 millimeter axle. And even if you buy the partial kit, I'm including the 5 millimeter axle, which is basically a MiG-29 main gear axle, and it works really good. So this has to be line bored to 5 millimeter, which is basically 0.196. So I'm going to use a number 9 drill bit, okay? So I made up a fixture to hold it. If you do it freehand, be very careful. It needs to be fairly precise and in a straight line. So we're going to go over here and I'll ring it up. So it can be done by hand, but I highly recommend you use a drill press or something. I gotta deburr this. So it's taken me a couple tries to kind of perfect this, but and then another good thing about the nose wheel brake, you don't need a steering gyro or anything because you're not going to have any differential braking at all. You got one brake, and it brakes straight as an arrow, guaranteed. It has to, and it really works out good. It just doesn't quite have the authority of dual brakes with all the weight on the mains. So let's see how the axle fits here. All right, so that fits very nice. It'd be nice. I need to really invest in a 1965 reamer, which would open it up a half a thousandth, but this works pretty good. I mean, it's pretty much slop free. So now the brake that comes This is the, what I mill this slot here, okay, and that's going to capture the fork. Well, I didn't want to make the slot any wider because it was getting a little bit thin, and that needs to fit over there. So what you got to do is you got to file or sand down just a little bit of the fork to get this to slide up and have the hole line up. So what I do, so I'm just going to sand it here. Doesn't take much. Just a little bit more. Okay, as you see, the hole lines up now. Perfect. So I'm just gonna buff off the sharp edges here. Little Scotch Brite disc. Okay. So now we can slide everything together here. So the JP wheel requires this little bitty shim right there. That goes on there. And the brake. And we're gonna try to line it up a little bit. Okay, so then this slides on here. And there's the axle. Okay. So now, with everything seated, you know, the wheel's pretty much centered in the fork. It's very, very close up in there, but it's not an issue at all. The tire's going to wear down a little bit. So you end up with a little space. Back this out. Push the bearing back down. Okay, so you end up with a little gap there. So I'm supplying, if you go with a partial, a little piece of 6 millimeter OD tubing with a 5 millimeter ID. So that's going to slide in here like that. Just a touch more. And then you slide your axle through, and there you go. So now you got a couple options here. You can, if you look at a completed one right here, what I do is I do it on a lathe. I put a little slot in the axle here. I just draw a line where I want that slot, and I'll put in the lathe. Use a very small grooving tool. Put in a groove, and I haven't been using snap rings. I've just been using 020 safety wire. If you use a snap ring, it's got to be a very precise groove so the snap ring doesn't pop out or fit too tight. So I put in a little groove on a lathe for the safety wire, and then I just use a cutoff wheel and cut the axle off to about right there. Now, if you don't have access to a lathe and you go with a partial, you can do it with a thin Dremel cutoff wheel. Just go ahead and chuck this up in a drill while you're spinning it, and then work on that mark with a cutoff wheel. And you don't have to go in very deep, probably 20 thousandths deep, and you'll develop a groove for the safety wire, and just tie up some safety wire. And you know, it's a good unit. I mean, it's been working flawless. It just doesn't quite have the braking power. So if you're working off a runway that's like 300 foot, where you got to be slamming the brakes on all the time, it'll work, but you better nail the landing. But I haven't had any trouble at all. The Cougar slows up very nice. you get it at a high angle of attack. I mean, there's a lot of aerodynamic braking. It works great. So, you know, that's what it's going to take. You know, if you want the turnkey, you're going to open up the box and you're going to get this. And you basically just thread the wire up and plug it into the controller. Or if you want to go to the partial and, you know, use your own nose strut, it's going to cost you 75 bucks. And why I'm mentioning prices, the whole conversion kit is going to be $300 with all the parts that you saw in the first video. That's pretty much going to be everything you need, except a few little nickel dime things. Other than that, you know, I'd like to use the T33 retracts, but this is a major pain in the butt to do, and I'm not going to do it. Plus, you know, you're saving, you know, probably 3-4 ounces, and I think it's simple in the long run to do it this way. But oh, another thing, I was always having trouble, you know, down the road where the main landing gear wasn't coming up and down, and so, you know, I thought, well, more is better, so I kept increasing the voltage on the BEC to, you know, 6 volts. I figure, well, it must be air loads. It's not. It's like this gear, the stock gear, likes about 5.2 to 5.3 volts. If you get it any higher, I don't know what's going on, but the gear just says, well, I'm not working at that voltage. So I'm gonna, if you order a kit, I'm gonna have the BEC programmed for 5.2 volts, and it seems that's a very good voltage for everything. And the model that I've been running with that voltage, I haven't had any trouble at all. And the brakes do, you know, it does a lot of skidding on the nose gear, but, you know, these tires are cheap. You can buy these tires for $6 a piece, you know. If you look at this one here on the one I've been flying, it's worn down pretty good, but, you know, it still works fine. I mean, there's a lot of meat on these treads. So, but that's about all I got to say. You know, if you want to try to get mains on the stock gear, go right ahead. But in all my experience in the Avante and L39 and everything, when they were using the stock gear on the bench, it would work fine with the wheel and brake. But when you get in the air and you get aerodynamic and G loadings on it, the stock gear basically says, I ain't gonna work with this gear, and it pretty much shuts off. But if you want to try it, knock yourself out. I've been really happy with the nose gear brake, and I'm going to keep using it. All right, thanks for watching. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you can. All right, thank you.